Hi, welcome back to ThursdAI, the Sunday special episode. This is Alex Volkov, and I'm recording this in a gorgeous space in San Francisco where I was invited to judge a hackathon, and now I'm hanging out with a few friends from Cerebral Valley. So thank you, Cerebral Valley folks, for letting me use this space for recording. And today we have a special episode for you. As if you hear this on Sunday, today is not a Thursday. We oftentimes have special guests on the pod where conversations are deeper, and usually I reserve that slot for a Sunday special release. So this is what you're hearing now. In today's episode, we actually have two conversations, although I only planned on one. And the first part is the planned part that you'll hear from João Moura. He is a director of AI in Clearbit and now acquired by HubSpot. And he is also the creator of CrewAI, an agentic AI framework that can run by orchestrating digital AI agents and have them work together. And I think you'll hear from Joao why this piqued interest for many folks, specifically because as we caught up with Joao, CrewAI was trending on GitHub and getting number 2 on Product Hunt at the same time. And it's a really cool framework. And I think the underlying power of this is that it can use open source local models. A lot of previous agent attempts use GPT-4, for example, and CrewAI can use things like Mistral or Mixtral running in LM Studio or Olama on your Mac, which I think is super cool. And I think on-device AI plus something like this framework is going to be very, very powerful. It was a great conversation with Joao. And surprising to me, the second guest was not planned. However, you may have heard from the previous ThursdAI that the bagel series of models from a self-proclaimed AI tinkerer, John Durbin, have taken over the leaderboards on Hugging Face, including a bunch of merges. And we haven't done a deep dive into merges and MergeKit and Frankenstein models, but if you've been to ThursdAI for a while, you probably heard about them. Merging is a technique to take a model or different models and without any computation, create bigger or different models using a dissection and some computing process of the layers of those models just based on weights without any training or continued fine-tuning, which is incredibly interesting. And John goes into this a little bit, and he created Bagel based on the inference of, well, I'll let you hear this at the end. And it's a very fascinating conversation. I took a lot from it, and unfortunately, we didn't have time for a long deep dive, but I learned a lot from John, and hopefully he'll come from the podcast, and we'll be able to dive even deeper and talk with John about how to create data sets, why DPO, is it better than PPO, and all of these great things. So we had two great guests, and I had a blast having them on the pod, and I probably should do more of these deep dives. So please let me know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter where I sent a summary, and in the newsletter, you'll find my trip report, quote unquote, for the hackathon that was co-sponsored with Together AI, and Langchain and Harrison was there, and I gave a brief talk as well, and so I added a bunch of pictures. So if you're hearing this in your car, check out the newsletter afterwards on ThursdAI.news. And with that, I give you our first guest, João Moura. All right, everyone, welcome back to ThursdAI, and we have a great guest today, João Moura from, I want to say Clearbit, I'm not mistaken. Or Joao, could you please introduce yourself and what you do, and then we're going to talk about the thing we're here to talk about.
100%. Thank you for having me. First of all, you got my name hard, right? It's hard to pronounce. I go by Joao, make it easier for everyone. I work at Clearbit, yes, but we just got acquired by HubSpot. I'm not sure. I'm Joao from Clearbit, from HubSpot, and from CrewAI. Everything at once.
Awesome. Welcome to ThursdAI. I think it's your first time here on stage, and welcome. We've met in San Francisco at the Olama open source event, and I think like Techni was there and a bunch of other folks, Olama, and I met you and we had like a brief conversation, and you mentioned CrewAI to me, and it sounds like super interesting. And then this week and the previous week, there was like an explosion of interest in CrewAI. So I would love to hear from you how your like last few weeks have been going. Definitely the time that we spent like together since then. A lot of stuff happened to CrewAI. Could you just, without saying what CrewAI is, could you just like recap on your experience for the past 2 weeks?
100%. And first of all, that Oyama event the other day was so good. Had so much fun on it. The last couple of weeks have been intense. I gotta tell you, kind of like the thing got like blown up out of proportion. Like I have a lot of DMs, a lot of messages, a lot of issues, and not that many pull requests, I want to say, but have been a lot of fun. CrewAI just like seems to have a lot of interest in from different people. I think this idea of building like AI agents is something that captivate most of the tinkerers out there, like how you can automate your life away. And it seems that have been resonating with a bunch of engineers out there. The last couple weeks has been very intense in terms of writing code, like at late nights, having like to spare a few hours to answer DMs and help with the Discord community. And actually, I actually end up recruiting my wife to help me with that. So if you see Bianca on Discord or over GitHub issues, that's my wife. Help me out, make sure that I get it all covered.
Definitely shout out Bianca. Thanks for helping. And Joao, so now trending on GitHub, I think number one, I think somebody submitted this to Product Hunt as well.
That was a thing. So I have been working on this, and like as an engineer working on an open source project, you don't think about these projects as products necessarily from the get-go. But as it starts to get more traction, it got the interest of like this one guy that seems to be like I don't know if it's a big deal or not, but it seems that he hunts a lot of products in Product Hunt. And for some reason, he got like the super fun thing is that I have been part of like, and I have seen other like product hunt launches, and I know how much effort goes into preparing those and to be ready for it and have like social media ready to post a lot of content about it. And I had none of that. I woke up in the morning and there was a message from a VC saying like, "Hey, congratulations on your launch." And I was like, "What is this guy talking about? I have no clue." It was very interesting because I opened like Product Hunt's website and I'm searching like, how do I cancel this? Like I didn't want to launch this, at least not right now. And on Product Hunt's like documentation, they mentioned that you have two options. Either you send them a message like super urgent so that they can pull like the brakes on it, or you run with it.
You just run with it.
At the end of the day, I was like, I'm just gonna run with it. I'm gonna see how it goes. And turns out we end up the day as number 2, and that was something else.
Yeah, Chris Messina is like the number one hunter. I think he hunted like most of the products on Product Hunt. So shout out Chris. And definitely I saw this, and what a surprise to wake up to and then get like the product number 2. Definitely helped the stats probably. Right. So I think with this excitement, let's talk about like why it's so exciting. Could you give us like a brief primer on CrewAI? We've talked about agents before. We obviously talked about like AutoGPT previously and GPT Engineer from Anton Musika and like a bunch of other like, very interesting projects. Could you give us the brief primer on like CrewAI, what it is, and then we're going to talk about like why you built it and the orchestration stuff?
100%. CrewAI is a very thin framework. It's a Python framework. It's in the process of being converted to TypeScript as well, but it's a Python framework that allows you to build a group of AI agents. You can think about it as if it AutoGem and ChatDAV had a child. That's the way that I usually describe it. So you're going to have a group of AI agents that are role-playing in order to perform a complex series of tasks. And you can do all sorts of automations on it, and you can plug it to all sorts of different systems out there. I think that's the easiest way to describe it right now.
Awesome. And could you you briefly mentioned this, but at least for the GPT, could you talk about like the inspiration here? What made you start this? As Clearbit was getting acquired and or around this area at least, I think. What made you work on this? There's a bunch of other orchestration platforms out there, a bunch of agents. What made you write your own instead of like taking something off the shelf on open source?
So turns out that this is a fun story. So back into my wife again, always propping me up. I love her. She's so great. She was telling me, hey, you have been doing all this amazing work at Clearbit. Because at Clearbit, we have been doing work with LLMs for the past 1 year and at a scale that I believe not many have. And she was like, you should be sharing more about this. Like you're leading these efforts and you're doing all these complex systems at scale. And this could definitely help and benefit other people. So she was telling me that I should do a better job at posting online in things like LinkedIn and Twitter. And Twitter, I think like I'm okay with, but LinkedIn was always hard to me. I feel like there is a harder threshold, like a higher threshold for how well your idea must be before you post it on LinkedIn. So I was considering like how I can do better LinkedIn posting. And because I was so excited about AI agents, I was like, can I build like a couple AI agents that will actually help me out with this, where I can like shovel in my draft and rough ideas, and it's gonna come up with like some guidance and a better post that I can just edit and post. It turns out that I could, and that's how I started CrewAI. I looked into AutoGem, and I was not a huge fan on how they like. One, they didn't have the option to execute tasks sequentially. They also has a lot of assumptions on how this agent should work together, and I think the way that they work together should vary depending on the tasks that you're trying to accomplish. I was not a huge fan of it. Chat Dev on the other side, I saw a lot of like good stuff on it, but it just didn't feel like a production system, right? Like it has like a game like UI, something that you would experiment with, but not something that you would deploy in production. So that's how I came up with this idea of like maybe I should do something myself so I can build this LinkedIn automation, and if that works, then I can build other sorts of automations. And that's how I started CrewAI. I built 5 agents from a social network researcher all the way to a chief content officer to help me create great ideas so that I can post them on LinkedIn. And it works great. I went from never posting on LinkedIn to post like 3 to 4 times every week. And I love what I post, and it seems other people do as well. So from that point on, I decided that I want to create more automations. And that's how CrewAI came to be. I just abstracted what I learned from that experience into this framework that I could then use to build other sorts of automations, and things took off from there.
Wow, that's incredible story. As a lot of the engineering stories happen when people create like cool things, laziness is somewhere there. Like I want to automate something that I don't want to do, but I definitely need done. I definitely have a bunch of those as well, at least for ThursdAI. The collection stuff and the other stuff that I would love to just like happen for me. So I definitely want to check out CrewAI for that and create like a ThursdAI collection thing. Could you mention like the like technical challenges here? You did mention that it's based on Langchain, if I'm not mistaken. You mentioned that there's not a lot of like pull requests for people to help out with. Could you talk about like the technical challenges you ran into?
100%. Yes. So basically, when I start to build this out, I realized pretty quickly that agents are just as useful as how many tools you can connect them with. And when I was looking online, I realized that both Llama Index and Langchain already had all these amazing tools that you could run with. So I wanted to make sure that people could use those tools too and build like crews that use them. Because of that, I took the decision to build CrewAI around Langchain so that if anyone wants to hook that up with their GitHub or their Gmail, there are already tools that were built out for that, and they're pretty easy to plug in and just work. And it seems Llama Index tools also work. I'm putting together some experiments around that to share with more people. But basically, that was some of the initial decision that lead to this design. I think some of the technical challenges that came from it is just realizing that as people started creating out these different crews for these different use cases, there's so many edge cases, right? You know that you can try to like steer LLMs your way, but especially if you're using like open source LLMs and smaller LLMs, they have a harder time just sticking with like a given format, or they have a hard time to just like using the right tools. I started to add a bunch of guardrails in CrewAI that actually makes it like way better than what you would get with any other agent framework out there. Where if it's, for example, one of them is if you're running out of iterations, like your agent is stuck on a cycle or taking too long to come up with an answer, it's gonna force it to come up with an answer if it goes over a certain number of iterations that you could define. Another one is if it tries to use the same two in a row, it's going to prevent it to do that and guide there towards moving on. Another one is it has caching. So every two any agent uses is going to be cached, so that if any other agent in the group decides to use the same two, they don't need to actually execute it. So I think a lot of the challenges come from like how I can add all these guardrails to make sure that independently of what the use case and what the person is building a group of agents for, that's still going to run smoothly. And that's where a lot of the work has been putting on.
So you mentioned local models as well, and obviously, like we mentioned, that we met in the Olama event, and Olama is a shout out Olama folks is a CLI to be able to download and run open source models on your hardware. Basically, many of the previous agent attempts, AutoGPT, like different ones, they use maybe GPT-4 or something. We're getting to the tools, and we heard previously in the space, we heard from John Durbin that there are models now that are like better for specific tasks, like function calling as well. Joao, could you speak a little bit about the difference that you see? Could CrewAI work with both, right? Open source and also like API ones? And could you talk about a little the difference that you see between like the open source models as we have them right now versus kind of the online models, and which ones would you prefer for your tasks?
Turns out that I think that the fact that CrewAI supports local models is some like thing that make it take off, because that's something that I wanted from the get-go. Like these agents, especially if you're trying to automate complex tasks, they can become rather costly if you want to run them like 24/7. But with like the ability to use local models, you can basically just set and forget, and they're going to keep doing work for you. So I wanted to make sure to support local models. Because of that, CrewAI supports like any of the vendors that you're going to find support in Langchain. So you can use any of the open source models out there, Anthropic, GPT, you name it. And you can also use Ollama. You can also use LM Studio. Whatever is the best way that you have to run your models locally, you can use that. I specifically, like personally, love Ollama. Ollama is amazing. I love the guys that build it as well. And I think it's so easy to use that I end up using that. And I have been using some of the smaller models. Shout out to Nose Research. I love that OpenERMS 2.5 model is just amazing and so small. Like I can't believe how good it is. And that's one that I use a lot for like when I'm using local like model agents. I'm using OpenERMS 2.5 just because of how well it works. But I also tried with Mistral. I also tried with Solar. I also tried with Nexus. So many models out there, so good. One thing that I want to call out as well is that these local models, they definitely struggle a little bit more when compared to GPT-4 in terms of sticking with a given format. I'm also collecting all my executions data so that I can fine tune agentic models. Similar to how you have like instruct models and chat models, I want to make sure that we start to see more agentic models out there. I have seen some closed source ones that are not like you're not able to touch on. So I'm building an open source data set that I can then use to fine tune those models. And then you basically are going to have these agents run on local models without a glitch. That would be at least the end goal.
That's incredible specifically because we've had interviews with a bunch of folks who build agentic stuff. So one of the more successful episodes of last year for ThursdAI was an interview with Killian Lucas from Open Interpreter, and the open source community here definitely opened the thread with Killian specifically to say, hey, when the users run a bunch of these stuff, we would love to have users opt in maybe for some like telemetry or analytics to be able to build the data sets for the tasks that were completed or not completed. I don't know if you have this plan, but definitely this is a benefit to the community if you do have a way for folks to like log their stuff. I also mentioned that like I probably should reach out to you separately to see if like these runs for these agents in Crew could be logged in weights and biases with the integration. Would be definitely more than happy to like participate and see if we can like look at the execution stuff of your agent on weights and biases. Joao, I think before I let Umesh, wanted to have like a bunch of questions for you as well. He's been running and he does agents of his own. I want to say, what's the next plans for Crew? Where are you planning to take this? Many of these projects, suddenly people ask for a UI because maybe they don't want to do like installing and doing like Python stuff. So you already mentioned TypeScript. Could you give us a little bit of a future sense of like where are you planning to take this?
100%, 100%. I think what we are getting now is a bunch of feature requests from a bunch of different sides. So there's some prioritization going on so that I can figure out what to focus next. One thing that seems to be a no-brainer to me, though, is that we need to have a UI for this. I think this would be pretty cool and unlock a lot of use cases for people out there. I know there are other people that have been building UIs for their businesses that are being built around this. I just think like an open source version would be better. So I'm definitely already working on the UI for this, where you're going to be able to put your agents together, bring your cartoons together, and then you can basically have these agents like run by yourselves. I might look into offer an option where you like we can even host it for you, and I'm still figuring out what that would look like. Maybe that's too far ahead. But yeah, I think like the UI for it makes a lot of sense. Also, another thing is that it seems a lot of the use cases kind of like go back into very similar tools over and over again. And even though you can hook them up with like Langchain or Lemma index tools, those might still require some like configuration. It might not be as straightforward for some people. So we might take an opinionated take on a tools specific repository and package that you can basically use to bring, let's say they want to create an agent that does reg. You might be able to do that with one line versus having to build like a custom like two set for that. So that's another thing that we have been looked at as well. I think there's so many use cases. One thing that I'm trying to do more now is just kind of like chat with more people that are using this, especially on the business side of things, to understand like what other use cases we could support there. But yeah, a lot of interesting things cooking.
I'm looking forward to hear more about CrewAI and upcoming things. I think Umesh, our co-host here, has been doing agents for a while and has a few questions as well. Umesh, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Joe. Thank you for coming in. We are almost 90% of our workflow now is agentic workflow. So we are employing the generative AI library of Google for Gemini, and also a lot of work using AutoGen. And we got introduced to CrewAI, I think, 4 weeks ago through one of my engineers, and found it pretty interesting. There are going to be a lot of pull requests coming in from us, actually, because we are thinking about a few things. I just wanted to ask you one particular question about the process part. You have, so your current library, as I understand, is a linear process library. And what we have is, what we are employing with AutoGen is also a bit of a graph of actions, as well as the DAG approach as well. DAG approach can be implemented using your process, but do you have a graph of actions workflow in planning or something that is coming up?
Yes. So this idea of processes, I want this to be like one of the cornerstones for CrewAI. My understanding is that a lot, as I said earlier, like a lot of the different outcomes that you're gonna get, and a lot of the magic happens when you define through what processes these agents are gonna work together, right? And there are so many options out there. Like you can have them work like sequentially, you can have them work like in a group, like if they were in a meeting, you can have like a consensus strategy where they can kind of like bet to see who is going to take on the task and even evaluate the results. So there's just a lot of different processes that can implement there. And the idea is to implement all these processes so that people can have some work happen in parallel if they want to, or sequentially or whatnot. About a graph specific API, I'm not sure how much I can tell about it, but we have been talking with Langchain folks about it, and there's some things that have been cooking there.
Enough said. Just last question. So currently it is all Python, but most of our implementations now, because of the latency and everything and complexity of the workflows that we are implementing, mostly our applications are enterprise applications. We are employing a lot of Rust for a compiled workflow. So do you have any plans of porting it to Rust, or you're looking for kind of a support in that area or something?
Yeah, so we're porting it to TypeScript right now, and there's some work being done into build like an API where you might be able to just spin it off as like a service, and you can then like add agents, create agents out through an API, so you don't have to create one yourself. You just need to figure out how you want to host it. I haven't thought about porting into Rust yet, but I would be open to that idea for sure. If I can get enough people to help out, I create a repository and we can get things working for sure.
Okay, I'll reach out to you separately. Thanks, Alex, for allowing me to ask questions. Of course, I have many questions, but I'll reach him out on his Discord.
Yeah, thank you, Mesh. And Joao, I just want to like recap on the awesome success of CrewAI. Specifically, I agree with you. I think the fact that like we've had many frameworks like this, we've talked about many frameworks like this, the ability to run this completely on your machine, the ability to like not pay for somebody else, the ability to like use Olama. I didn't know that you also support LM Studio. Shout out LM Studio, a friend of the pod. Hopefully we're gonna get on the next ThursdAI. So I didn't know that I can like open up a local model on LM Studio and then the crew would use this API. Definitely want to play with this. Now, I want to give you a few minutes to just like talk to the community. A lot of things are happening in this world. I find it very interesting where kind of the AI engineers, the traditional software engineer background folks, they're building the tools, they're building the RAG systems. Let's say they use the Langchain. From the other side, we have a bunch of machine learning folks who are building the models, fine-tuning the models, and working on that space and reading the papers. And I do see a connection between. And obviously, my role in Weights and Biases specifically is to connect these two worlds. I do want to see more people that train models also kind of like think about the agentic behaviors as well. We heard John Durbin before talk about like, hey, there's specific data sets for RAG, there's specific data sets for execution and function. I think Aeroboros has the data set has a bunch of like function calling as well. So definitely I want to see a connection here. Joao, please feel free to talk to the community in terms of like what you need to make Crew the best crew ever. Where can they find you? What you can get help with? The floor is yours. Feel free to take over and ask everything. Community will provide.
100%. And just to tap into what you said there, I agree. I think like there's something magical that happened like last year with like GPT taking the world by the storm is that it connected two groups of engineers that in the past didn't talk very much. And that was like AI and ML engineers with regular software engineers. I have managed teams in both areas in the past, and I definitely have seen like that there isn't much interaction there. But right now, it's amazing to see all the amazing stuff that have been coming up from like those two groups to interacting more together. It has been a lot of fun. About CrewAI, yes, I would say give me a follow on Twitter or X, I would say now. So give me a follow on X. And I definitely will keep posting and share more about CrewAI and all the things related to LLMs, agents, and everything else. You can know more about CrewAI by looking into its GitHub. So you can go into my profile /CrewAI. I probably add the link to my X account as well. From that, if you have follow-up questions or if you want to like see what people have been cooking with it, I would say join the Discord community. We have around 500 people there and has been growing daily. So if you join that, you might be able to see other use cases and things like that. If you're curious about it, but you're just like, you're not sure what you could build with it, there's a bunch of examples in the README and even some videos that I recorded. Crews doing like stock analysis or trip planners and all that. There's a lot of content there that you can consume in order to get your ideas. And if you do decide to give it a try, don't miss out on the custom GPT. It's also linked in the README, and it can help you write the code. It can help you with ideas for the agents, ideas for the roles or for the tasks, or anything around using CrewAI. If you're also curious about contributing to the project, GitHub has a bunch of issues. My wife, again, has been flagging and tagging all of them. So thank you so much.
Shout out, Bianca.
You can find like all the ones that are tagged with help wanted or the ones that are related with questions, and you can help answer them as well. And we're going to be writing new documentation from the scratch. So this might be a great opportunity to help with like more simpler stuff as well, if you're into that.
Awesome. And I think I saw something. I don't know if I have a link to the generous documentation on the fly from just the code itself, and it looks super cool. I'll try to send this to you. Joao, thank you so much for joining Thursday. This is your first time here, hopefully not the last. Congrats on the success of CrewAI, and it's been great meeting you and then having you on. Definitely thank you for coming, and folks should definitely check out CrewAI, give Joao a follow, and we will expect more. I can't wait to run a few crew myself to help me with ThursdAI tasks, especially on local models. It was super cool. Thank you for coming, man.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me. Catch you folks online.
Awesome. And your audio quality was great, by the way. Thanks for testing out your mic. We're moving forward into the top open source on the LLM leaderboard and the creator. So if you guys open the open source LLM leaderboard, which we often talk about on Hugging Face, we've talked about kind of the difference between human evaluation and the automatic evaluations that Open LLM Leaderboard runs. You will see a bunch of models. The top 3 ones are from CloudU, and they're I think merges of Yi34 and then the Mixtral 34B as well, but it's not based on Mixtral. And then the rest of is a bunch of John Durbin Bagel examples. And so all of those, there's 6 models there that are based basically on the John Bagel DPO versions. And I just wanted to shout this out and shout out John Durbin for working this hard and releasing these models. Let's see if we can hear from the man himself. Hey, John.
Okay. Hey, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for joining us. I don't remember if you've ever been on stage, so feel free to briefly introduce yourself to the audience who doesn't know you, and definitely they should follow you as well.
Yeah, I'm a software engineer. I'm an AI tinkerer. I've been doing synthetic stuff since, I guess, maybe April with the Ouroboros project. It's been tons of fun. Lately, I've been mostly working on the bagel models. If you're wondering what the bagel name came from, it's from Everything Everywhere All at Once. Great movie.
I love that movie.
Yeah, so that's the kind of the premise of the model is all the prompt formats, all the data sources, all the training techniques. There's Neptune, there's DPO. Yeah, just fun stuff there. As far as the leaderboard, that wasn't really my goal. If you look at the actual token count per data set, I think the highest amount of tokens is actually probably the Cinematica data set, which is movie scripts converted to role play format. So it's interesting that it does so well, but really I was targeting the model for general purpose as a merge base because I know that merge kit is so popular now. So I was trying to come up with a base model that has a little bit of everything and every prompt format so that anyone who wants to do this alchemy with merge kit can use the Bagel series as a base, because if you have an alpaca-based model and a vicuña-based model, they're not going to merge very well. It'll have weird stray user tokens or whatever. The idea with Bagel is to be a good base.
I also saw quite a lot of work you're doing on new DPO datasets. Could you talk about those?
And then, yeah, I keep cranking out new DPO data sets to enhance the stuff that's lacking right now. I think even the Yi34B might be a little bit overcooked. I used QLoRa for both the supervised fine-tuning stage and DPO. And it turns out DPO, you really need to use an incredibly low learning rate. I was even using maybe 50x smaller learning rate for the DPO phase than the supervised fine-tuning phase. And even then, I stopped the run about halfway through and killed it because the eval started spiking all over the place. Yeah, still lots of stuff to learn, and I'd love to do a full weight fine tune of the Yi34B. I'm probably going to work on a Solar 10.7B version of it next, and maybe a DeepSeek 67B. I'm curious if the DeepSeek's deeper network is actually going to improve things in any sort of way, but yeah.
Awesome. John, thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for deep dive. So I have 2 questions for you real quick. I did not expect you to join, so this is not a full-blown interview, but I'm very happy that I have you. First of all, you mentioned that there's 2 versions, DPO and non-DPO of Bagel, and you mentioned the differences between them. You said DPO version is more factual and truthful, but not great for RP. I wasn't sure what RP is. Roleplay?
Role play, yeah.
And then creative writing. Could you give us like a little bit of a sense of like what's like DPO versus non-DPO version? Is that just data set based, or is there something more going on behind the scenes that like makes the one model behave differently than the other?
Yeah, so really all of the Bagel series, you basically have two phases of training. There's the regular supervised fine-tuning stage where you can look at the Bagel repository. Everything is completely open source and reproducible. But in the supervised fine-tuning phase, it's just a ton of data sets. And then I take that fine-tuned model, and then I apply DPO, direct preference optimization, to it. And I have quite a few DPO data sets in there, but really the DPO landscape is sparse right now. You basically have DPO data sets from NVIDIA, the Help Steer database, which is a human annotated one where they ran a bunch of prompts against LLMs and then had humans rank them. Then there's like the LIMSYS 1 million, where you can find the exact same prompt sent to multiple models. And so you can take like the GPT-4 answers, use that as the preferred answer, and then Vicuña 33 or something as the rejected answer, because you're assuming the GPT-4 one is better. Same with, there's Orca DPO pairs. I know Argia just did a new release of that, which is better. But we don't have a ton of DPO data sets that are specifically for creative writing tasks and stuff. I made one, which is actually based on the Ouroboros 2.2 compared to the Ouroboros 3 series, where I actually rewrote most of the creative writing prompts with a different prompt and some other stuff. I actually used the March version of GPT-4, which is better. So in that case, you get basically like 3 to 4 times the number of tokens in the output. So there's that DPO data set, which I make myself in the Bagel code. But otherwise, there's really no role play focused data in any of the DPO data sets. So what happens is you take that supervised or fine-tuned model from the first phase and you apply DPO to it, and it kind of experiences forgetting of what it learned during the fine-tuning of some of the stuff like creative writing and role play. Yeah, same with code. So if you look at my Twitter feed, you can see that I've released, there's a Python DPO data set that'll hopefully fix some of that stuff. I just released another contextual question answering DPO data set for better RAG performance after the DPO phase. I put out just a few minutes ago Gutenberg DPO, which is basically I parse maybe 14 or 15 books from Project Gutenberg that are public domain into chapters, and then create prompts to actually write those chapters. And then I create summaries. So you have like the previous chapter summary inside the prompt. And then I use that to prompt one of the local LLMs. So I used Dolphin, eChat, and Llama 213B to get the rejected values. The outputs from these models are fine in some cases, but they're short. And you'll notice with the LLM, like most of the LLMs, when you write a story, it's always a happy ending, and it ends with like, and they walked into the forest and lived happy ever after. It's boring and cliche. My hope with the Gutenberg stuff is that when you actually prompt it to write a chapter of a book, it's going to be from human writing that are popular books. They're a little bit old-timey because they have to be public domain, but hopefully it will improve the writing and creativity of the whatever bagel models I do in the future with. So I'm trying to kind of improve that, but still a lot of stuff I need to do. I think the next thing I'll do before I actually make another bagel model is use something like the Goliath 120B to make a role play centric data set for DPO. That way it doesn't completely forget how to do that as well.
Awesome. And I'm just looking at the number of data sets that, like you said, everything everywhere all at once. And this is why it's called Bagel. Everything Bagel. It's just like an insane amount of data sets. I'm just going to run real quick. AI2, Arc, Ouroboros, Belly, Blue Moon. You have Capybara in there, Cinematica, EmoBang, Gutenberg, LMSys Chat, like tons of stuff. It's incredible how well the model performs. John, one thing that I wanted to follow up on before we move on, you mentioned something that's better for RAG as well. You mentioned a DPO dataset is better for RAG. Is that the contextual DPO that you released?
Yeah. Yep.
What makes it better for RAG purposes? Could you like maybe give 2 sentences about this?
And this is actually something you can reproduce with the Ouroboros tool as well if you wanted to generate your own data. But I have this instructor in there called counterfactual contextual. And what that does is it makes a bunch of fake facts. Like it'll say the Battle of Midway happened in the Civil War, something like that. And it'll put that into context and then ask a question about it. And then it'll have the real version of the fact as well, World War II, Battle of Midway. And then the idea is that you want to train the model to always attend to the context and not try to base the answers on what it knows from the base pre-training. For example, if you're doing, I don't know, like a virtual, have a different planet where the sky is purple, and you ask the model what color is the sky based on your lore book or whatever, you want to make sure that the model always obeys your context and answers accordingly, and not says the sky is blue because I know the sky is blue. So the data set that I put in there has a bunch of those kinds of things. You can't just put in the fake facts because then the model will just learn to answer incorrectly. So for every fake version of the context, you have to put in a real version of the context as well. The other thing that makes it better for RAG is I actually stuff more than one piece of context into it, because like with RAG, the retrieval accuracy is the hardest part. Yeah. So you want to retrieve more than one document. So suppose you want to retrieve 10 documents. If you want to stuff all 10 of those into a single prompt, and then you want to provide references to the user, you have to know which segment of the prompt it came from. This data set also includes, like, you can put metadata into the prompt for each section that you retrieve. And then when you ask for references in the output, it'll actually only reference that segment. A bunch of stuff like that. Yeah, I put in irrelevant context as well to try to confuse the model, because retrieval is very noisy. All of that kind of stuff is in there.
First of all, I think from the whole community, thank you a lot for everything that you do and your work. And I really appreciate your time here on ThursdAI. You're more than welcome to always join us. And I didn't expect you to be here when I talked about the stuff that you just released, but it's really, really awesome when people from the community who work on the stuff that they do also come and have a chance to speak about them. So John, you're always welcome on ThursdAI. I would love to invite you again and talk deeper. And as you release the next stuff that you're working on, and I know you're working on a bunch of next stuff, more than welcome to come here and discuss, or even like DM me before, so we'll know what to chat about. I will definitely mention the DPO datasets in the fine-tuning hackathon that I'm going to this week. And so thank you for that. That was why I wanted to do a little bit of a deep dive. And also I want to shout out you as one of the most active users of Weights and Biases. You posted your recap that we sent, and you have 2 reports there, and you're part of the top 10% of most active users with 2,500 hours trained in 23. And 900 plus models. So that's incredible. I just wanted to shout this out.
Yeah, I'm a little addicted.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I appreciate everything that you do. And I think the community as well.